and then a message afterward. Last time I was here, I gave a report, so I just want to, you remember, but I'd like to just show you some new things that are going on and some new things in our life. Last time I spoke, where am I pointing, by the way?
That shouldn't matter. Oh, you don't want me.
Okay, I'd like to start. Last time, if I remember correctly, I spoke about this work in Italy, Salvati per Servire, which means saved to serve. And it was born out of a big earthquake in the city of Aquila, where the brethren from southern Italy, after the earthquake went up, they started bringing help to people and the gospel in this city over there, Aquila. You can see just a picture of some of them. What happened during the earthquake, and it's kind of run mostly by this brother Corrado. Is there a pointer here? Okay. Here you see it's quite an organization. They've got a bunch of trucks like that, and they bring lots of goods. They started in Eastern Europe and in Africa, Rwanda, after they saw that in Italy the ministry was going quite well, where it's kind of a humanitarian aid, where they also bring the gospel to the people. But anyway, during the Ukraine war, about a day or two after it started, they were in the Ukraine, and I was able to connect them. I'm a member of Salvati per Servire. I don't travel with them, but I'm a member. But I was able to get them connected with CMML because when they started going to Ukraine, they just didn't have the funds to make it. And CMML has since then given quite a lot of, I don't know where it comes from and stuff, maybe out of Alan's paycheck, I don't know. But they sent a lot of money and they were able to do quite a bit of good work there. I just wanted to read a message, an email, a portion of an email from dated November 14th, 2022, sent by Corrado to CMML, and I'm on the list as well. So he wrote, "Dear friends in the Lord, I want to share with you all that the Lord is doing in the Ukraine. Last weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we went to Ukraine, where we had 3 meetings. In all, we preached the gospel to about 1,000 people. About 50 people prayed for their salvation, and we're joyful to see these results. We're continuing to fill the parcels with food. By faith, we want to reach 7,000 parcels with the Gospel of John. They make these parcels with food stuff, clothing, essentials, and the Gospel of John. We want to reach 7,000 parcels with the Gospel of John. And the brochures we received from Poland, Poland was also helping the brethren there, in addition to food. And we want to remain on mission in Ukraine until the end of November, after which we have to return to Italy." So that's just, they're seeing churches that were emptied because of the war, and then bringing food stuff. Lots of people are coming to get food, and so they're coming to the churches there in the Ukraine, and they're filling, and people are getting converted. So as is often the case, the Lord uses these tragedies to his glory. And that's just an example. This church used to be, from what they were telling me, much fewer than this, let's say. Then there was the earthquake in Turkey, the same thing. They're in touch with CMML. CMML is helping them out, and they're bringing food over there to Turkey after the earthquake, you remember. There it's much more difficult. They can't give the Gospel of John really like that, and it's much more difficult to reach the people. Okay, so that's one thing that we're involved in. Then I'd like to speak of what the Lord's doing in our church, our local church in the town of Monterosi. For a number of years, really, since COVID especially, we were regularly getting maybe 30 people attending church. Since then, actually, since we came here, the Lord started doing a work among the Hispanic population in Italy, South America, Central America. And there's a community there of in Monterosi, and they told me from the church, they told me that since we've come here, I don't know, maybe it's a blessing for them when we go away, but 13 people are regularly attending from this Hispanic community, Dominican, Honduran, Peruvians. So, and we, and it's connected to this work that we started that's connected to Salvati per Servire, Save to Serve, that other work that I was just showing you in the Ukraine. We got hooked up with them and we started our own little mini humanitarian ministry in the town, you know, the church. And that's where we made lots of contacts with these people. And now the young people group went up from like 6 to, I don't know how many are attending now, 12, it doubled at least. And this is just, we rented a little, by faith, really, we rented a little apartment next door to the church hall. And we used it, and we're using it as a magazine, as a warehouse. And also for Sunday school and stuff, you know, we have a little room where we meet, a little hall. And these are just some. Así eres tú, así eres tú, así eres tú, así eres tú, así eres tú. Aunque no pueda ver, está sobrando. Aunque no pueda ver, está sobrando. Siempre estás sobrando. Okay, so, and one last aspect of our ministry is the Bible school where I teach. For about a year and a half now, maybe 2 years, it's been under new management. 2 young men have taken over, and they're doing some revisions in the program in the church. And even though the residential school isn't large in terms of number, we have quite an extensive satellite program and distance learning. Satellite program is when the teachers go to other places where they've gathered a group of people. So all told, people being that eBay, the Bible school is serving is about 180 people told in Italy, which isn't bad, though the residential school is very small. Okay, so I just wanted to, since I spoke last time I was here, I gave a report. I just wanted to add some new stuff. There is something new for us. Last time I put up the same slide about our future, and we were thinking at the time of perhaps the Lord was leading us back here to the States and maybe to work in this area even. And while it's not completely quenched, that thought, we feel ultimately in the past few months before coming here to visit, we felt that the Lord was telling us, stay in Italy, stay in Italy, stay in Italy. So anyway, we came and we had a meeting, and this is kind of the big news, and you could pray for this, surely. For many years, our commending assembly, which is Rutherford Bible Chapel, they faithfully provided us with about 60 to 70% of all that we needed in order to survive in Italy and serve the Lord and raise a family and everything. Well, a few weeks ago, they called us in for a meeting to discuss our future relationship with them going forward. They're in a transition period. Maybe some of you know Gerard DiMatteo. He's stepping down, and there's kind of new management coming in. Let's say new elders and new philosophy of church. Anyway, at the meeting, they informed us that the Lord was leading them to reallocate a good portion of their missionary spending from the foreign field to inner city missions near them, up in northern, wherever they're in northern Jersey there. So practically speaking, that means that by May 2024, the gifts that they were giving to us will be reduced overall by 60%, something like that, which means our overall support will be reduced by 50%. That support that we could count on month after month. So we've been thinking, like I said, about this return to the States, but we believe the Lord is leading us to stay in Italy. So when we heard that, when we had the meeting, my wife and I, we had the meeting with Rutherford, and we heard that our funds were to be reduced, our gifts. We were, as you can imagine, shocked, even though I had a heads up that something like this was coming. But soon after that, the Lord started strengthening our faith, my faith, I'll speak for myself, and also the resolve not to give in to despair, because 50% is 50%. And so we're presently waiting upon the Lord to show us our next step. We know that he'll provide for us because he always has and he always does. But still, when you're in it, you're in it. You're in the waiting period. So one thing we know for sure is that he takes care of his servants. He's always taking care of us. We've never had to beg for bread or anything like that. So this very big change in our life got me thinking about the Lord's ways in our lives as his followers, as his children, which brings me to something I'd like to say concerning a verse in 2 Corinthians 12:10. You know it well, I'm sure. In Corinthians 12:10, the last part, it says, "For when I am weak, then I am strong." And this statement is made within the longer passage of 2 Corinthians 12:9-10, which I'd like to read. 12 Corinthians 12:9-10. "But he, the Lord," Paul is writing, "said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ might rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I'm content. I welcome," in another translation, "I'm content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And if you read the whole paragraph, the whole context, Paul is reflecting on two extreme, opposite personal experience he had with the Lord. One is the great blessing the Lord had given him 14 years previously when he was caught up. Remember, he was caught up into the third heaven and in the body, and he saw unspeakable glories, or he heard unspeakable glories. He saw the glory of God. He saw things he couldn't repeat, basically. And so from a purely human view, the knowledge and insight he gained through the world, it would have made him strong. No, what do we say? Knowledge is power, they say. So he would have been feeling quite strong. Oh, look at this great revelation the Lord had given me. The second experience was a great suffering he received from the Lord's hand, a thorn in the flesh, suffering received from the Lord, a messenger from Satan given to harass him so that he might not get conceited due to the surpassing greatness of the revelations he had received. And so this got me thinking of our own situation as well, that, well, the Lord isn't opposed to doing the good cop, bad cop routine with us sometimes. He'll lift us up to the heavens, and then he'll let us crash down to earth. with a trial or tribulation. I'm sure we've all been in both situations. And so tying it to what's happening in our lives right now, I've come to view our recent story in light of what happened to Paul. No, on the one hand, I remember the miraculous way that the Lord had established us in ministry in Italy in the first place. I may have said this last time, but both Virginie and we moved independently to Italy over 30 years ago. Neither of us, we didn't know each other. Neither of us was following the Lord at the time. Then in the early 90s, I came back to Christ after a period of abandoning the faith, and she got converted. And we met at the Bible school. We got married, moved to Belgium, where I finished the second round of studies in 2003. And without any prospects of work or support, but desires to serve the Lord in Italy, where we found ourselves for different reasons, we were about to head back to Italy because I was finishing my round of studies in Belgium, when apparently, and I say apparently, when apparently out of nowhere, without knowing any churches or any believers in the United States, because we both really came to the Lord effectively in Italy, one of my professors, his name is Don Tinder, some of you might know him, he used to do the circuit here. He hooked me up with some organization called CMML. I had no idea what it was. And with some assembly from Rutherford, New Jersey. All I knew about Rutherford was it was near the Giant Stadium. I had we had no connections with the churches at all in the area. And so by faith, about $800 to our name, we flew to the States in the winter of 2003 to see if the Lord had anything in store for us, because we really felt the Lord was calling us to serve him in Italy. Well, he did have something in store for us. And within a month of arriving, having only just met the believers at Rutherford and the elders, the elders, they called us to lunch one day, and they assured us during lunch that they told us that they believed that the Spirit was leading them to commend us through CMML and send us back to Italy as their missionaries out of nowhere, right? And since then, they've provided us with a good percentage of all we needed to survive there. And it was truly a miracle. I look at it to this day as a miracle. I still can't, I still don't know what happened. We went there, didn't know anybody, anything. After a month, we were commended to go back to Italy. And so it was a miracle. And at the time, it felt as if the Lord had transported us to the third heaven to show us his glory. Right? But now comes the thorn in the flesh, right? A discontinuation of our security, right? A crashing down to earth. How would we live, serve, or continue raising a family, right? These are the questions that entered our mind, either in Italy or in any place else for that matter. And we still don't have an answer. We're still waiting. But by God's grace, and this is where I want to get to, all this helped me to begin understanding Paul's words in a fresh light. For when I am weak, then I am strong. After having given us financial peace of mind for 20 years, the Lord has seen fit to test us. And what should I say? I actually said that to myself. Well, what should I say at this point, right? To the Lord. Have you abandoned us? Should I ask him, have you abandoned us? Should I ask him, how could you do this to us? Should I say, you've been unfair? This is completely unfair. And I thought, well, shouldn't we rather reply as Job did in Job 1:21? The Lord gave and the Lord had taken away. Well, we really had no choice to say anything but that, because that's what happened. But then I started thinking, well, but we can't stop there. We have to continue on with Job, because after that, what does Job say? Blessed be the name of the Lord. And that kind of opens a window. The Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. When I'm weak, I'm strong. And I'm reminded also of Jesus' attitude when facing an infinitely greater weakness than any of us will ever know. He had just entered Jerusalem to embark on his Passion Week in John 12:27, the last week of his life, at the end of which would be great suffering and finally a brutal death. And at a certain point, he says, John 12:27, now is my soul troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, because it's for this purpose I have come to this hour. And Jesus already knew what Paul would later learn, and the truth that we all have to embrace. No, as it says in 2 Corinthians 12:9, the Lord has a plan for our life, and sometimes tribulations that are a part of this plan will be too great for us to overcome. That's just how it's going to be. That's just how it is. But when that happens, his grace will be sufficient. 2 Corinthians 12:9, because his power is shown to be perfect. Where? Not in our strength, but in our weakness. That's when he shines. That's when it's clear to everyone it's the Lord and not us. And we all know that grace is unmerited favor, undue help, a gift that we don't deserve. That's grace. The particular grace, though, in the cause of weakness, is not God solving our problems. Sometimes we think, oh, by God's grace, this problem, this trial will go away. That's not the grace in weakness. Huh? Didn't Jesus go all the way to the cross in the end? Right? His problem didn't go away. And didn't Paul carry his illness with him until the day he died? God's grace was with him, but that grace wasn't getting rid of the problem. Grace and weakness, therefore, is not God necessarily removing the trial, but rather giving us sufficient patience to endure, so that we may say, yes, I am exceedingly weak, but in my weakness, I'm strong in the Lord. And such grace in times of trial is nothing less than the personal presence of God with us in the midst of the trial. Jesus by our side, getting us through the dark night, however long it may take. It's that felt presence. God is with us. That sometimes when we're strong, we're not feeling it. We're not seeing it because we're independent. We're going on forward on our own strength, our own abilities, and what we can do. But when he makes us weak, he gives us grace. We feel his presence because we know that if it's not him, then we're going under. But we're not going under. He's sustaining. He sustains us. And that's the grace in weakness. Thus, Paul can write that it's better to boast about the thorn in his flesh, his weakness, that many people were disgusted at. Some people think it was an eye problem where he was leaking fluid from his eye or something like that. Anyway, people looked at his illness and they saw weakness. And he said, well, I'm going to boast in my weakness more than I'm going to boast in the experience I had of the third heaven. Why? Because treasuring God's help in times of weakness causes Christ's power to rest on us on a whole nother level. So what then? So God's grace in weakness, what is it? It's for perseverance. Because when we're strong, we don't speak about perseverance, do we? I don't need to persevere. I don't need to endure. I'm doing fine. I'm getting through the day on my own strength. But when we're in weakness, what do we need? We need to endure. And so God's grace in weakness is endurance, is perseverance, is the knowledge that he's with us. And if we persevere until the end, as James says, what are we going to receive? We'll receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. And this brings me to a consideration. To have to persevere in the first place presumes that there's weakness. It's when we're weak, when bad circumstances come upon us like powerful. Have you ever been caught in a wave? I'm sure a wave in the ocean and just taking you this way and that way. You're fighting with all your strength to get straight, but you just wind up like a beach seal on the beach at the end. That's the Lord allows those moments in our life, and in those moments, what do we count on? When we're caught up in a wave, we count on the motion of the tide to bring us to the shore. When we're in weakness in all areas of our life, we're counting on the Lord to get us through. There's going to be some topsy-turvy moments, but His grace is sufficient, and we're gonna wind up on our feet. And the weaker we are, the more power of God we can count on. The more He makes us weak, the more power we can count on, because that's what's needed. If Jesus was to have the power to save humankind, He'd have to be made exceedingly weak. No? The cross. If Paul was to complete his mission to the Gentiles without getting puffed up, conceited of all the great things the Lord had given him, he would have to know weakness, trouble, and difficulty in life to counterbalance the great blessings he'd received. Good cop, bad cop. That's what I mean by that, right? When a church is blessed with many things, faithful leadership, faithful believers, then it too must expect seasons of difficulty so that it doesn't fixate on its own strength, on its own giftedness. But by becoming weak, it remembers the one who gives the gifts and give Him glory for that. And the fact of the matter, and I'll finish here, too much blessing without testing isn't good for us. We get spoiled. We know that we're raising our kids, right? Too much goodness, pure goodness, is not good for us, because God gave him the thorn in the flesh specifically so he wouldn't get spoiled, so he wouldn't get conceited. We need these things in our life to keep us level-headed and to keep our eyes fixed on the Lord and not on ourselves. And God knows this, and so He allows all manners of trials and tribulations in our lives, even things which wrench our hearts and make us suffer to the core. For the unbeliever, who also suffers in life, right? We're not the only ones. For the unbeliever, suffering is only suffering. For the mature believer, though, it's also joy. As James says, to open his letter, James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, when you're made weak. For you know that the testing of your faith produces what? Endurance, steadfastness, perseverance. It's a joy. The trials are a joy because it's producing that which we need to receive the crown of life. And so when we're in the midst of trials, we recognize we're not happy. We're not skipping in the park with a balloon and sucking a lollipop. We're feeling the weight of the trial, but there's joy. We might not be happy, but we could be joyful, right? Because we know that the Lord is doing exactly what He knows He needs to do in our lives. And every good gift, James says in chapter 1, verse 17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. And sometimes we forget this. This is how I'm framing what's happening in our life right now. I'm framing that I realized that I'd come to depend on the system, the monthly security. And God is telling me, you see, men, however faithful they might be, what you receive is from me. not from them. Because every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. And this is the big thing I learned. That's security. And I'm big on security. When I have security, I feel secure. When I don't have security, I don't feel secure. And you know, there's that hymn song, famous. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. And we sing that, but until we're actually tested and tried in our life over and over again, we sing it, but it's kind of, we believe it, but in the abstract. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know it holds. What a nice thought. But then when it happens, then when we have to really depend on he who holds the future, then we realize how abstract our faith really is. And so the Lord sends tests so that we can make concrete our faith in our weakness. Because in our weakness, our faith is tested. And since we're his work, he will see to it that we come through the test. In our own self, we'd probably fail 98% of the time in the test. But because we're his work, his handiwork, he'll make sure that we come through somehow. We won't even know how, but at the end of the test, we'll see, we'll only be able to say, blessed be the name of the Lord. You gave, you took away, but blessed be your name. You've done wonderful things. I don't know how, because according to human standards, these trials and difficulties should only bring you down and mash you up. But you've lifted us up instead. That's how he always does it. And so with the experience of trials, we learn, and then sometimes we think, oh, now I get it. Now I finally got it. And the Lord brings a bigger trial. I said, well, I didn't get it 100%, I guess, because I have more to learn. So blessed be the name of the Lord. Count it all joy, brothers and sisters, when we find ourselves in all types of trials and testings and tribulations, because the Lord is working wonderful things out in our life. And if our hearts are set on what the Lord considers good, then we can manage. If our hearts are set on the things we want, then the test is going to be very hard, but the Lord is going to purify us even from that, because we're his handiwork. So blessed be his name. Lord God, we thank you for your word, how it encourages us, how it's relevant for every situation in which we find ourselves. We give you praise and glory and honor for the good things you've done. I want to thank you personally for us, how you're sustaining us, and how our faith, even if we don't realize it, our faith is getting more and more concrete, stronger, more robust. Thank you, Lord, for your good, that you might bless all the believers here as well, whoever might be going through difficulties and trials, Lord. Give them all eyes to see from your perspective, through the filter, through the heavenly filter, Lord, not through the earthly filter, which can drag us down. Help us to see things how you see things through your eyes, oh God, that we might be encouraged to persevere and endure, and knowing that you'll give us the strength and the power to do so. In Jesus' name.